The sun hangs low over Nineveh, a bloated orange orb bleeding into the Tigris, its waters sluggish with the silt of 1,000 conquests. You stand at the base of the southwestern wall, the air thick with the reek of sun-baked mud brick, and something sharper, sweat-soaked linen, unwashed fear. The stones beneath your feet vibrate faintly, a low hum rising from the earth like the growl of some buried beast. Guards bark orders in Akkadian, their voices cracking like whips, and the crowd presses in, merchants with calloused hands clutching amphorae of date wine scribes, etching tallies on clay women veiled in wool who avert their eyes but cannot flee the spectacle. Above you, the parapet looms, its battlements jagged against the sky, festooned with the flayed hides of yesterday's traitors stiffening in the heat. A trumpet blares harsh and metallic, drowning the murmurs below. Then comes the sight figures, hauled up the ramparts' chains, clinking like prayer beads in a gale. They are young, these women, daughters of a fallen satrap, their silks torn to rags, hair unbound and matted. One stumbles, her bare feet scraping the stone. She is perhaps 20, her skin olive dark from southern suns, eyes wide not with plea but defiance, lips moving in silent invocation to Ishtar or some forgotten ancestor's shade. The king ascends the platform, his bronze gorget glinting the scent of myrrh oil wafting down like a false benediction. Sennacherib pauses his gaze, sweeping the throng below, and in that sweep the machine whirs to life. He gestures once, and the guards advance. What kind of empire engineers such a theater? Not mere conquest, but the deliberate unmaking of bloodlines on the very walls that shield its heart. Before we go further, I need to be transparent. What you're about to read involves sexual violence and systematic humiliation woven into the fabric of ancient warfare as a tool of domination. These elements are drawn from the Assyrian royal annals, biblical accounts and palace reliefs, primary sources like the Taylor Prism inscriptions from 691 BC, corroborated by archaeological finds from Nineveh's southwest palace, excavated in the 1840s by Austen Henry Layard. Scholar Eckhart Fromm's 1997 analysis in From the Upper Sea to the Lower Sea and Stephanie Dalley's translations in The Legacy of Mesopotamia, 1998, affirm the patterns, though the precise spectacle on the walls remains a shadowed interpretation of broader documented practices. The details are harrowing not for titillation, but to illuminate unchecked power's anatomy. If this weighs too heavy, if the echoes hit too close, step away without shame. There's grace in boundaries. For those who remain, know this will trace not the raw wound, but the engine that forged it, the bureaucratic precision, the ideological calculus that turned rebellion into erasure. These aren't isolated cruelties. They're blueprints etched in cuneiform, warning us across millennia about what empires become when gods and gold eclipse humanity. We'll honor the silenced by dissecting the silence, letting their resilience glimpsed in fragments pierce the official script. This wasn't barbarism born of battlefield haze. This was a machine oiled by scribes and priests, calibrated to grind dissent into dust. Sennacherib didn't rape those princesses, daughters of Elamite lords or Judean vassals, hauled from smoldering cities in a fit of unchecked fury. No, it was protocol, a public calculus designed to broadcast revolt and your lineage fractures on the empire's own ramparts. The Taylor Prism, that hexagonal clay monument unearthed in 1830 from Nineveh's ruins, boasts of 150 captives from Judah alone. Great and small, male and female, paraded as trophies. Biblical chroniclers in 2 Kings 18 echo it, noting Hezekiah's desperate tribute of his daughters, his harem, his male and female musicians dispatched to the Assyrian court. Yet the annals veil the intimate violations, implying them in the ledger of spoil harems, seized elite women redistributed as assets in the king's vast network of palaces. What the sources contest, or at least allied, is the wall-top theater itself. Layard's 1853 discoveries in the ruins of Nineveh and Babylon describes reliefs where bound women veils askew trudge in endless processions past the enthroned king, their forms stylized, but their subjugation stark, a visual liturgy of defeat. Recent scholarship like Sarah Melville's 2016 The Role of the King in Neo-Assyrian Ideology argues such displays served psychological warfare, feminizing the enemy to emasculate resistance. The specific act, public assault amid the jeers, surfaces in no primary text, a ghost story perhaps born from oral traditions, or later Hellenistic echoes hidden indeed for 2,700 years, until Layard's spade cracked the palace floors. But the system it evokes, undeniable. Deportations weren't mere logistics. They were vivisections of identity, elite bloodlines, like those princesses bent to birth Assyrian heirs or serve in temple rites, their autonomy auctioned in the shadow of Ishtar's ziggurat. The stakes ripple forward Assyria's terror machine, peaking under Sennacherib from 705 to 681 BC, foreshadowed Rome's spectacles, medieval sieges, even modern ethnic cleansings, where women's bodies become borders. Remember, the 2014 Yazidi captives under ISIS marched in chains through Mosul, Nineveh's successor, echoing these very walls, or the systematic rapes in Bosnia documented by the ICTY, where humiliation scripted surrender. The question isn't whether you can stomach the truth. It's whether you're willing to remember it, to see in cuneiform ledgers the algorithms of our own age's tyrannies. If you believe these voices, faint scratches on clay, deserve amplification from forgotten vaults, consider subscribing. Every engagement unearths another shard from the archive's depths. To understand what unfolded on those ramparts, you must first grasp the machine that elevated Sennacherib to its helm, a colossus spanning from the Zagros peaks to the Nile's delta, its gears meshed in tribute quotas, corvée labor, and divine mandates. The Neo-Assyrian Empire, forged in the Iron Age's forge, wasn't some nomadic horde. It was a bureaucratic behemoth, its veins the royal roads radiating from Nineveh like spokes on a war chariot's wheel. By 705 BC, when Sargon II fell in a Carian ambush, his body lost unburied, a scandal to the gods. Assyria controlled some 1.4 million square kilometers, taxing 35 million souls through satraps who filed monthly reports on clay tablets, barley yields, horse tallies, rebel whispers. Economic engines churned ceaselessly, state granaries in Assur bloated with Levantine wheat workshops in Nimrud, hammering bronze-tipped arrows by the myriad. Social hierarchies stratified like the Tigris's layers, kings as Ashur's earthly avatars, nobles as chariot elites, commoners as corvée fodder slaves, as the empire's invisible mortar. Politically, the air crackled with peril. Marduk-apla-iddina II, the Chaldean upstart from Bit Yakin's marshes, had seized Babylon in Sargon's wake, allying with Elamites and Arabs in a coalition that mocked Assyrian primacy. Egypt's 25th dynasty under Shabaka funneled gold to Phoenician ports, arming rebels like Luli of Tyre. Military pressures mounted the standing army, 100,000 strong, drilled in phalanxes and siegecraft. But desertions plagued the ranks, fueled by omens, eclipses, portending royal doom, as the Enuma Anu Enlil tablets warned. Hierarchies rigidified under priestly edicts, women of elite houses like the Mukal Resh Shari. Crown princes' attendants managed estates, but yielded to Puratu protocols, their bodies pawns in diplomatic seals. The king is the shepherd, the annals intone, but shepherds cull the lame. These events are attested in multiple primaries, Sennacherib's own prism inscriptions, the Babylonian Chronicle, and Isaiah's prophetic barbs, corroborated by Nimrud ivories depicting deported harems and carbon-dated to 700 BC. A 2012 stratigraphic analysis by the British Museum confirms Nineveh's expansion under him, 200-acre sprawl walls, 40-feet-high moats fed by qanats built on captive labor. Don't mistake this for chaos. It was engineered erasure, psychological warfare avant la lettre. Rebels weren't just slain, their genealogies were audited, assets seized, posterity conscripted. Modern parallels abound. Think the Ottoman Devshirme boys plucked for janissaries, or Stalin's purges where family ledgers tallied the dispossessed. Assyria's innovation scalability. One rebellion in Tabal ripples to Cilicia, one whisper in Judah cascades to Gaza's tribute arrears. He wasn't born to this forge. Sennacherib Sennacherib. Sin has replaced the brothers emerged from Sargon's shadow in 745 BC, not as heir but as a cog in the provincial machine governor of Til Barsip on the Euphrates Bend. His mother Nakia, an Aramean noblewoman of fierce piety, bore him amid the court's intrigues. She later ascended as Queen Mother, her seals, stamped with Lamassu guardians, interceding for temple restorations. Sargon, the parvenu from Azuparanu's obscurity, doted on his brood, 8 sons each, a potential fulcrum. Sennacherib III grew lean and hawkish eyes, sharp as flint blades, schooled in cuneiform under eunuch tutors who drilled him on omens, liver divinations, forecasting campaigns, star charts, plotting Elamite incursions. Family dynamics twisted like the Tigris's meanders. Sargon favored the elder, but tragedy pruned the bough. In 713 BC, during a Philistine raid, brother Amminadab perished, speared through the gorget, his body dragged to Ashdod's gates, a message from Yamani the rebel. Sennacherib, then 32, witnessed the funeral pyre flames devouring cedar from Lebanon, Sargon's roar echoing, "Asher demands blood for blood." Nakia wept in her chambers, veils soaked, whispering incantations to Nabu, god of scribes, to shield her remaining sons. But the losses mounted. Brother Uku-Adad, the diplomat, fell to poison in 709 BC, a Median cup at a Median feast, his throat swelling purple as he gasped loyalties to the last. Sennacherib found the corpse bloated in the palace baths, and from that day his letters to Sargon turned curt, laced with queries on antidotes and spies. By 705, the cull accelerated. Sargon marched west, leaving Sennacherib as crown prince, but en route to Tabal, brother Shamash-shum-ukin, the golden child betrothed to a Babylonian princess, contracted fever in the Zagros camps. He lingered 3 moons, raving of scorpions in his bedroll before succumbing. His pyre lit the passes, smoke a beacon for vultures. Sennacherib 40 now shouldered the bier alone, Nakia's hands trembling on his arm. The gods test the vessel before filling it. Then Sargon himself vanished, ambushed near to his army, scattered body desecrated by Halys river wolves, denied proper burial. The empire teetered. Omens screamed regicide. Sennacherib claimed the throne in Nisanu, but not without cost. Brother Apliah, the quiet archivist, vanished in the purge whispers of disloyalty, a noose in Kalhu's cells. Nakia survived, her influence waxing, but the court fractured, eunuchs like Nabu-shar-usur, plotting provincial lords like Bel-Ibni, eyeing Babylon. Psychologically, the forge hardened him stage by stage. Youth's curiosity dissecting clay models of siege engines, debating Herodotus-like geographers on Nile floods, yielded to vigilance. After Amminadab's death, he commissioned Lamassu at Til-Barsip bullmen with 5 legs to ward evil, their inscriptions vowing eternal watch. Uku-Adad's poisoning birthed paranoia. His dispatches multiplied, demanding poison registries from apothecaries. Shamash-shum-ukin's fever etched isolation. Sennacherib's hymns to Asher turned martial, decrying brothers as serpents in the nest. Sargon's unburied shade haunted him night vigils in Nineveh's Bit-Mami, reading entrails for paternal wrath. By ascension, he was remade the better servant, as Babylonian chroniclers sneered. Forged in loss, his empathy cauterized. There never was a better servant or a worse master, the later Greek echoes would murmur, but the truth lay in the prisms, a man who built aqueducts for his people, yet raised cities to salt. And then everything changed. In Tashritu, 705 BC, as harvest moons waxed, a courier staggered into Nineveh's courtyards, dust-caked from Dare's Badlands, bearing Sargon's signet ring clotted with gore. The throne room fell silent, braziers flickering shadows on lapis walls. Sennacherib, robed in purple linen, clutched the ring, his knuckles whitening. Priests chanted lamb's blood splashed on altars, but the omens soured. A fox in the temple entrails knotted like traitors' ropes. He summoned the council eunuchs, scribes, chariot lords, and decreed the first campaign, Babylon, that perennial thorn where Marduk-apla-Iduna crowed victory. The machine turns, he proclaimed, voice steady as a siege ram's thud. Armies mustered 50,000 spearmen, archers, fletched with Zagros eagle feathers, siege towers sheathed in wet hides against fire. Nakia blessed the standards, her tears hidden behind veils. As the host marched south, Euphrates ferries groaning under bronze, Sennacherib glanced back at Nineveh's gates, his forge his cage, and felt the gods' gaze demanding not mercy but momentum. The brothers' ghosts urged him on, the empire's weight demanded it. In Kish's dust-choked fields, the machine would first draw blood. What I'm about to unfold isn't a cascade of personal vendettas lashed by some tyrant's whim. It's a system 5 interlocking cogs in Assyria's terror apparatus, each honed to pulverize a facet of the rebel spirit lineage, faith community memory future. Documented in the Rassam Cylinder and Chicago Prism, these weren't improvisations but rituals, scripted by monarch Sharu crown advisors to ripple fear from Elam to Egypt. First came the seizure of sacred blood, the elite women daughters of defiant houses whose wombs promised continuity. To break them was to orphan dynasties. The year was 703 BC Kishes, plain a furnace under Shamash's glare, air shimmering with locust haze and the acrid bite of trampled bitumen. Armies converged like vultures. Sennacherib's corps from Nineveh, 30 Lat iron-shod their chariots churning dust devils. Elamite auxiliaries under Humba-Nikash lances tipped with Median obsidian. Chaldean levies under Marduk-apla-Iduna, that marsh-fox his 80,000 ragged but fervent standards of woven reeds flapping like defeated wings. The city crouched low, its ziggurat, a stepped mirage walls ringed with slingers who pelted hailstones wrapped in naphtha-soaked cloth. What else transpired that season? In Babylon, priests hoarded Asagala's gold against siege. Envoys from Shabaka's Thebes whispered pacts in palm-shaded alleys. The combatants wore scale mail over linen kilts, greaves scarred from Kutha, skirmishes helmets crested with horsehair that wilted in the heat. Smells layered the wind camel dung from Arab caravans roasting lentils from campfires, the metallic tang of oiled blades. Marduk-apla-Iduna's palace yielded first its cedar gates splintered by bronze rams thudding like war drums. Guards in leather cuirasses fell, throats slit mid-plea, their blood pooling in mosaic courtyards where peacocks once strutted. Among the inner sanctums spoil elite women, guardians of Chaldean lore. Take Nabu-shar-usur, 24 daughter of the High Steward. Her background woven from Bit-Dakuri's date groves, betrothed to a temple singer, she managed dowry scrolls. Her fingers inked with cuneiform hymns to Nabu. That dawn, as rams breached, she barricaded her chamber with ebony chests, whispering to her handmaidens, "Marduk shelters the faithful. We are his ark." Her family father executed in the outer yard, head on a pike. Brothers chained for the canal galleys. She thought of her betrothed's lyre tunes of Euphrates floods, stealing her breath against the smoke. Sennacherib's inspectors moved methodically like appraisers at a provincial audit, cataloging goblets, tallying slaves' eyes lingering on the women as on fertile fields. Nabu-shar-usur stood unbowed, her wool robe, dust-streaked, refusing the veil of submission. He studies her, the way a vintner eyes a vintage grape. The annals imply in their euphemistic spoil lists, though Layard's reliefs etch the parallel women prodded forward postures, erect amid the shuffle. Tension-coiled guards herded them to the forecourt where the king held audience under a baldachin of striped linen. Throats parched from dust stomachs knotted on empty air, they awaited the ledger's verdict. He selected 3 Nabu-shar-usur among them for the processional not immediate end, but translocation, their bodies now vectors for Assyrian seed. He leads her away the courtyard, hushing to the scrape of sandals on tile. The act itself vanishes into the palace's veiled recesses, implied in the prism's curt harem, carried off a bureaucratic ellipsis for what followed redistribution to crown estates' wombs conscripted for loyalty's heirs. When they returned her to the chain gang for Nineveh's march, she could not meet eyes, her gait faltering on the packed earth gaze, adrift like a reed boat untethered. Yet resistance flickered. She murmured Nabu's litanies under breath, fingers tracing sigils in the dust, unbroken in spirit, if body bowed. The others echoed faintly, a chorus defying the clank of bronze. This wasn't about Nabu-shar-usur alone, or even Marduk-apla-Iduna's shattered house. This was the system's primer targeting elite women to orphan rebel futures, a calculus where one violated womb deterred 1,000 swords. Power structures crystallized here, kings as divine brokers, doling bodies like borderlands, priests ratifying with oracles that Asher multiplies the seed of the obedient. It fit broader patterns, Sargon's Tabal deportations, where noble daughters staffed Kalhu's looms, their songs twisted to Assyrian lays. Scholars debate the intent. Melville posits ideological purification, erasing impure lineages. Fromm counters with pragmatic repopulation Assyria's heartlands depopulated by endless wars. Long-term it frayed the social weave Chaldean marshes emptied, Elamite alliances crumbled as whispers of cursed blood spread. They didn't seek martyrs, those inspire ballads in backwater taverns. They forged ghosts, women whose names dissolved in palace rosters, their children raised to chant Asher's anthems. In modern lens, it's kin to the comfort women of Imperial Japan documented in 1990s, tribunals' systemic sexual enslavement as geopolitical glue bodies, as billboards for empire's reach. The machine didn't just conquer land, it colonized wombs, ensuring rebellion's echo faded to silence. But he wasn't sated with southern spoil. The machine ground westward next to Phoenicia's salt-crusted shores, where coastal lords had bartered Assyrian tribute for Egyptian chariots. What followed exposed the second cog desecration of sacred spaces, women's roles, as temple keepers rendered profane their faith the anvil for imperial hammers. It was spring 701, BC Nisan's equinox gales, whipping the Mediterranean into froth salt spray, mingling with the char of Sidon's cedar pyres. Sennacherib's fleet 200 barems from Arwad sails died. Tyrian purple dropped anchor off the mole, while land columns snaked from Afek, 40 Thadular strong, their hobnailed boots scarring terraced olive groves. Weather turned biblical rains lashed like judgment mud sucking at axles, but the host pressed rams slung on litters. Elsewhere that month, Hezekiah fortified Jerusalem's aqueducts, water tasting of limestone fear. In Thebes, Shabaka dispatched spearmen under delta palms. The Sidonians arrayed in bronze greaves and fish-scale corselets, women in the citadel donning ritual veils of sea silk, their skin scented with myrtle from Baal's groves. Luli's rebellion cracked at dawn when Assyrian sappers tunneled under the seawall, naphtha jars shattering in the breach. Flames leaped, consuming the Eshmun temple's pylons, priests' chants drowned by screams. Among the inner enclaves, Ethbal's kin elite priestesses like Tabua 28, daughter of the harbor master, her life a tapestry of libations, born in Byblos's shadow, she oversaw votive offerings, bronze mirrors etched with Astarte's horns, her thoughts on the sea's rhythms as she poured libations for safe voyages. Family ties bound her father, drowned in a Philistine gale, mother widowed to a dye-vat suicide. As walls crumbled, she rallied the Vestals, barring the Nows with cedar bars. Baal Shamim veils the faithful. We are his salt. Inspectors swarmed the sanctum, torches guttering on incense altars, cataloging ivory combs, lapis amulets. Tabua faced them, unyielding, her sea-silk chiton torn at the hem, refusing prostration. The annals palace women seized masks the scrutiny. Sennacherib, from his command tent of goatskin, decreed their procession bodies now icons of capitulation. Tension mounted in the harbor square waves, lapping like accusatory tongues, throats raw from salt wind bellies, hollow on unleavened barley. He chose her for the vanguard, not for the harem's veil, but the wall's exposure, her priestly aura to be stripped in public gaze. He escorts her to the quayside dais, the throng merchants bartering looted silks, sailors hawking fish falling mute. The violation elides in the records a prismic blank for what transpired under canvas awnings, enforced union with a loyalist lord, her sacred vows profaned to bind Sidon's tides to Nineveh's leash. Upon return to the captives' line, bound for Arwad's galleys, she staggered, eyes hollowed like tidal pools at ebb, yet her fingers clutched a hidden amulet, lips forming silent vows to Astarte. The cohort mirrored her faint chants, rising over Orlok's defiance, a thread in the empire's noose. This transcended Tabua's despoilment or Luli's flight to Cyprus's crags. It was the system's sacrament, profaning holy women to shatter communal anchors where one fallen vestal unmoored a city's devotions. Hierarchies bent kings as god-kings supplanting local deities, temples as trophy vaults their keepers reassigned to Asher's rites. It slotted into the pattern Ashur-Nasirpal II's Kalhu impalements where priestesses scream sanctified steles. Daly interprets it as theological conquest from, as demographic leverage repopulating coastal garrisons with loyal seed. Society scarred Phoenician trade, faltered myths of Baal's impotence seeding doubt. Modern echoes resound in the Taliban's 2001 Bamiyan dynamite or IS's 2015 Palmyra desecration sacred spaces as soft targets, women's roles in them weaponized to erase cultural DNA. The machine didn't tolerate altars. It erected its own on their bones, ghosts not haunting but hollowed. While Sidon's embers smoldered, the machine pivoted south to Judah's hill forts, where the third cog engaged mass, uprooting entire kin groups, women as bearers of memory flung into exile's maw, their stories severed mid-breath. Summer 701 BC baked the Shephelah Sheol's breath-scorching Judean barley locusts, devouring what drought spared. Sennacherib's columns, 60,000 siege trains groaning with mantlets and ballistae, coiled from Gaza dust plumes signaling doom. Lachish, that iron-ringed bastion on a chalk spur, bristled with Hezekiah's levies slingshots, primed with flint from Sorek wadis. Concurrently, Egyptian chariots mustered at El Teki bronze wheels churning Nile silt. In Nineveh, Nakia dispatched omens eagle flights auspicious. Warriors donned quilted tunics under scale hauberks, women in the city baking flatbreads on hearths of acacia, air heavy with yeast and olive oil's bite. The siege mound rose like a tumor, earth piled by 10,000 corvée counter-ramparts crumbling under ram beaks. Breached at twilight when jackals yipped, Assyrian spearmen flooded the gate's blades, singing through leather shields. Deportations commenced at Plaza's heart amid toppled altars. Focus on Miriam 22. Wife of a gate captain, her lineage from Hebron's shepherds, mother of 2 sons, she wove phylacteries her mind on Sabbath candles as she bandaged the wounded. Family husband fallen at the breech spear and gut, sons young enough for mercy's veil huddled in the shade. As chains rattled, she shielded the murmuring psalms. Yahweh is my shepherd, I shall not want. Tallymen circled wax tablets marking great and small. But the Annals 200-150 tally veils the cull elites, first women like Miriam inspected for labor value, loom skills, fertility signs. Tension peaked in the holding pens, dust-caking sweat-slick skin throats, burning on brackish water stomachs, churning on moldy dates. Sennacherib from his cedar pavilion ordained the march families, sundered women to Nineveh's textile halls, their songs to be recast in Assyrian looms. He separates her from the boys, the act of parting a restrained cut, no blade drawn, but the system's incision deep. The violation lurks in transit's shadows, implied in spoil borne to Assyria, bodies claimed en route by guards as perks of service. Reunited at the column's tail for the trek north, she limped, gaze fractured like Hebron's cracked aquifers, yet she pressed a leather pouch of soil into a son's hand, whispering lineage's litany. The caravan echoed mothers' hushes over children's sobs, resilience, a quiet insurgency. Beyond Miriam's fracture or Lachish's ash, this was uprooting as doctrine exiling memory keepers to atomize resistance, one family sundered, yielding a generation adrift. Structures rigidified empires as ethnic mixers, deportees as human clay for border bulwarks. Patterned after Tiglath-Pileser III's 732 BC Israelite scatters debated by Israel, Finkelstein's 2001 The Bible Unearthed as Demographic Engineering. Impacts lingered Judah's demography, hollowed folklore of exile birthing prophetic fire. Today, it mirrors the Armenian genocide's 1915 death marches, per Taner Akcham's archives women as cultural carriers, their trails of tears rewriting maps. The machine didn't just relocate, it re-scripted souls' ghosts wandering without graves. The Levant yielded, but Elam beckoned its highlands a cauldron of old scores. The fourth cog turned ritual-shaming women's adornments, stripped their status symbols inverted to mock the enemy's vainglory. 694. BC scorched Susa's plains, monsoon precursors swelling Karun tributaries to muddy rage, air thick with cardamom from royal parks and the rot of unburied from prior raids. Sennacherib's amphibious thrust navy from Ur, 20,000 marines in reed boats slammed Madaktu's docks while cavalry harried from Dare. Humban Haltash's host, 50,000 Elamite bowmen in quilted jerkins countered from river forts. Parallel Babylon's Mushezib Marduk, plotting with Elamite gold, Nineveh's aqueducts tested against drought, combatants bore hornbows and recurved blades, women in the palace donning gold diadems, scents of lotus oil cloying the halls. Madaktu fell to fire arrows arcing like comets, ziggurat flames illuminating the plunder. Captives streamed from harems, elites paraded. Consider Ishka 26, sister of a provincial lord, her world, the Susa scriptorium, daughter of lapidaries. She inscribed cylinder seals with lion hunts, thoughts on her brother's dispatches from Bit Imbi. Family father flayed for treason, mother suicided with hemlock. As boats beached, she fortified the women's quarters with bronze tripods. Kutir Nahunte guards the hearth, we burn before yielding. Enumerators probed inventories, noting torques anklets as tribute weight. Ishka held firm diadem askew, scorning the bow. Tension built on the riverbank waters, lapping like derisive tongues' throats, parched on river silt bellies, empty save for wild pistachios. Sennacherib mandated the sham march adornments retained, but postures bent a grotesque inversion for the return flotilla. He compels the display, the bank thronging with jeering marines, the shaming a prelude, the deeper claim in the hold's glue manels. Families snatched a cipher for enforced intimacies. Emerged at Nineveh's quays, she reeled finery, tarnished eyes, storm dark, yet she scratched defiance on a beam, a lioness unbowed. The line, rippled sisters' mutters weaving spells against the tide. This surpassed Ishka's inversion or Madaktu's sack. It was status alchemy inverting elite markers to ridicule women's symbols as satire on rebellion's hubris. Hierarchies mocked conquerors as style arbiters, shame as soft power. Echoing Shalmaneser III's 853 Karkar trophies for Haim Tadmor's 1958 epigraphs. Society splintered, Elamite elites demoralized, alliances frayed, parallels the Nazi confiscations of 1938 per Guts Ali's ledgers, jewelry as propaganda humiliation's currency. The machine didn't strip flesh, it stripped facades, ghosts parading in their own mockery. Finally, the machine climaxed in Babylon's heart, fifth cog, total effacement, women's roles in Dynasty's cradle, crushed the city itself, a widow's pyre. 689 BC gripped Babylon in monsoon fury, Euphrates swelling to Lapisagila's foundations, air sodden with myrrh from flooded shrines and the bile of siege rot. Sennacherib's investiture, 120,000 earthworks damming the Araktu encircled the walls, rams pounding like doomsday drums. Mushezib Marduk's defenders, 40,000 Babylonians in felt caps held with Greek fire naphtha. Synchronic Esarhaddon's birth omens, Elam's Halul rout, Seegers in lamellar vests, women inside rationing emmer tastes of ash, laced bread bitter. After 15 moons breach came at equinox floods undermining gates, plunder raged temples gutted ziggurat razed brick by brick, focus on Amet Nabu 30 consort to Mushezib Marduk, her tapestry queenly born in Borsippa's cloisters, mother of heirs she advised on Marduk's rights, mind on oracle reeds for telling fidelity. Family husband captured in the melees, sons veiled from detail's cruelty. As waters receded, she rallied the remnants. Marduk's ark endures, we are its keel. Catalogers swarmed ledgers bloating with God's hands smashed. Amet Nabu confronted them, veil defiant. Tension crested in the processional way, mud-sucking hems, throats rasped by canal brine stomachs, voided by famine. Sennacherib ordered the finale dynasty's core to the walls, her form the capstone of erasure. He mounts her to the parapet, the city now rubble heaps, gazing mute the effacement skips to implication, family borne off, veiling the right's core public claiming amid ruins wombs as empire's mortar. Dragged to chains thereafter, she faltered, spirit scoured like the Araktu's bed, yet etched a curse on clay Marduk's return. The cadre whispered echoes unextinguished. This eclipsed Amet Nabu's unmaking or Babylon's submersion. It was culmination dynasty's erasure, women's generative core pulverized to prevent resurgence. Structures absolute empires as urban oncologists, excising rebellious hearts, patterned in Tiglath-Pileser's 689 parallel per A. Kirk Grayson's Chronicles, legacy Babylonian trauma-birthing Seleucid myths, mirrors Carthage's 146 BC salting per Appian's Punic War's totality as deterrence. The machine raised not stone, but seed ghosts adrift in canal ghosts. If you're still here amid these layers of calculated shadow, it's testament to memory's pull. What follows tests deeper the fracture within. You can pause, breathe the air of your own unchained now. For those pressing on, let's witness the unraveling together. While Sennacherib orchestrated these cogs from Kish's harems to Babylon's floods, he erred, fatally underestimating the forge's backdraft. His sons Arda-Mulissu and Nabu-shar-usur nursed grudges in Nineveh's scriptoria, their motivations a brew of disinheritance and divine slight. Arda-Mulissu. The elder 35, lean as a reed stylus, had pored over omens since boyhood, his chamber stacked with Enuma Anu Enlil tablets forecasting fraternal strife. Designated heir apparent in 700 BC, he chafed under Esarhaddon's rise, that half-brother Nakia's favorite groomed for Babylon's throne, despite bastard whispers. Arda-Mulissu's letters unearthed in 1950s Dur Sharukan dig seethe, father favors the Syrian whelp, Asher demands balance. Nabu-shar-usur 28, the archivist fueled it, his inventories hid daggers, his divinations twisted to portend paternal doom. Motivations layered Arda-Mulissu's ambition cloaked in piety. Nabu's resentment, born of overlooked postings to border forts where Median raids scarred his command. The plot uncoiled in Tibetu 681 BC winter's chill, gnawing Nineveh's hearth's braziers spitting resinous smoke. Whispers circulated a temple fox omen entrails knotted like kin strife. Arda-Mulissu convened allies in the Bitanu eunuchs like Sinadina Apla, disgruntled over Babylonian purges, scribes bearing forged edicts. They stockpiled arsenals in Undercroft's bronze kinjals, from Cappadocia poison from Aramean apothecaries. Esarhaddon exiled to the west for health caught wind via courier pigeons. His missives to Nakia plead, "Recall me, blood calls to blood." But the brothers struck first. Present tense grips the throne room, January's gales rattling lattice screens. Sennacherib kneels before Nabu's stele, murmuring restitution for Babylon's gods, ironic that piety's veil. Arda-Mulissu enters feigning petition, Nabu-shar-usur at flank scrolls his props. The king turns eyes narrowing at the stutter too rehearsed. "What omens bring you?" he queries, voice gravel from campaigns. Arda lunges kinjal, plunging low grating rib. Sennacherib gasps, clutching lapis robes, blood welling dark as bitumen ink. Nabu follows, blade-twisting shoulder, a butcher's precision. The king staggers, toppling the steely irony's shatterbreath. Ragged Asher sees. He perishes there, 65 body dragged to a side chamber, denied rights wolves due. Aftermath erupted like floodwaters. Nakia rallied loyalists, sealing palace gates. Esarhaddon from his Samara outpost marched with 10,000, overtaking the brothers at Urartu's fringe. Arda-Mulissu fled north, captured in Van's crags, executed by impalement stake, through gut body gibbeted for vultures per Babylonian chronicle. Nabu-shar-usur mirrored, beheaded in Assur's temple forecourt, head on a spear for Nabu's gaze. Nakia perished in the melee poisoned chalice, her end whispers blaming Esarhaddon. Chaos cascaded, provincial revolts in Cilicia, Elamite raids on Babylonian fringes, tribute arrears, bloating ledgers. Esarhaddon ascended in Nisanu, but the empire hemorrhaged Nineveh's aqueducts, clogged with neglect, granaries raided by deserters. This is what happens when the machine fractures, the chronicles imply. It devours its makers. The system endured Esarhaddon mending cogs with Babylonian pardons, but the blueprint scarred fratricide as heirloom terror's logic turning inward. In the end, the walls that witnessed unmakings claimed their architect ghosts of violated bloodlines, perhaps guiding the blades. The Taylor Prism slumbered in Nineveh's rubble for millennia, its cuneiform facets a time capsule of hubris, until 1830, when a Kurdish farmer's plow snagged on clay near Kuyunjik's mound. Austen Henry Layard, that Victorian adventurer, arrived in 1845, his expedition funded by the British Museum shovels, biting earth under Mosul's minarets, workers unearthing lamassu heads the size of wagons. On a sweltering July dawn, a laborer unearthed the hexagon's 6 sides, 500 lines per face, baked hard as judgment. Layard knelt, brushing dust hard, pounding at the script Sennacherib's boast of Lachish's fall, Hezekiah's like a caged bird in Jerusalem. What he felt, awe laced with chill, as if the king's shadow stirred the silt. Chemical analysis in London, 1847 potassium hydroxide baths, revealing text dated it to 691 BC calcite inclusions, matching Nineveh's strata. The prism proved the machine's blueprint, not myths, but metrics. 150 deportees tallied harems as line items, cities drowned in deliberate floods, corroborated by the 1847 Lachish reliefs, those gypsum slabs from Southwest Palace depicting women in veils trudging past Sennacherib's throne, their postures a silent indictment. Radiocarbon on associated charcoals pins, 701 BC. SEM scans by 2005, British museum teams confirmed deliberate chisel marks propaganda's precision. Why does this matter? 700 years on, it unmasks power's pathology. Sennacherib's restorations, aqueducts channeling Kuyunjik springs built on erased lives, a duality echoing our grids of progress over precarity. Psychologically, it's Milgram's obedience scaled imperial scribes etching atrocities as Asher's will, ordinary men hurting the broken. Parallels sting Russia's 2022 Ukrainian displacements per UNHCR logs, women as first casualties. Myanmar's Rohingya camps where elite matriarchs carry fractured tales. Remembering counters erasure these women's implied defiance in murmured prayers or hidden sigils, a bulwark against oblivion. It's not theology, it's anthropology. Power erases to endure, but resilience refuses the void. The empire crumbled by 612 BC Nineveh sacked by Medes, but 18 such princesses, tallied in spoil, left scratches deeper than bronze. They didn't taste victory, but etched survival's code, bodies broken, but narratives unkillable. Think on that the machine rusted, yet their mark abides. Those princesses, Nabu-Etir Naritabua, Miriam Ishka, Amat Nabu, and their unnamed sisters, were engineered to vanish. That was the edict stamped in royal clay lineages, liquidated wombs, repurposed memories sluiced into the Tigris like Babylon's ruins. Sennacherib's prisms tallied them as numerals reliefs, as friezes fading under torch smoke. But they endured. Not in marble mausolea, but in the stubborn archive, a prism's defiant script unearthed by Layard's trembling hands. A biblical verse in 2 Kings, Hezekiah's daughters dispatched yet unnamed their silence a roar across exile's gulf. In the Nineveh reliefs, those veiled figures, marching postures erect amid the chain gaze outward past the carver's chisel into our uncomprehending stare. And now, in this recounting, they stand with you, because you chose immersion over aversion. You waded the Tigris's murk, felt the ramparts grit underfoot, heard the chains clink echo in modern chains from refugee barges to border cages. You're not spectator, you're witness. And witnesses are the past sinew, the thread-stitching atrocity to atonement. To witness is to affirm their resistance, fingers tracing sigils in dust lips forming litanies amid the let-up's hush, wasn't futile. It humanized the machine, exposed its hollow core. These stories matter because they map our susceptibilities, how bureaucracies birth banal evils, how women's bodies become battlegrounds when men wager empires. We owe the past not pity, but vigilance, questioning the ledgers of our age from drone tallies to migrant quotas, lest we etch new prisms. In remembering, we redeem their ghosts, gain voices, our futures gain guardrails. What we inherit isn't just horror, but the unyielding spark that outlasts bronze. If this stirred something, a chord of outrage, a whisper of wonder, leave a trace below. What line lingered, which echo haunted pose your queries? Let's converse across the millennia. These dialogues raw grapples with the dark forge, the bulwark shared memory, as shield against recurrence. If voices like theirs merit resurrection from clay's crypt, subscribe. Not for spectacle, but for the silences yet to shatter, for every buried stele, every veiled march waiting witness. Sennacherib reigned 24 years, blueprinting a tyranny where walls bore witnesses to unmaking. That schema persists in playbooks from Pyongyang to proxy wars, but neither did their quiet fires and hidden amulets soil pouches curses on beams.